Hello, my friends. I'm Jamie McGlue. I'm an independent candidate for Dublin Bay North in the coming elections. Today I want to talk to you about who I would encourage you to vote for. And in a nutshell, it's people who stand by three policies, which I think should never be up for debate, but somehow they have been during the last government. And people aren't talking about it enough. But free speech, if it's a democracy, you need free speech. That's the way democracies function. The core of it is we're all free to say whatever we want, and that way we can figure out through a decentralized network of upvoting, like the best ideas rise to the top. So it doesn't matter what my opinion is or your opinion is. It matters what most people's opinion is, and we form that through free speech. Look, if you're inciting people to violence, of course that's not allowed. That's bordering into violence. But anything like offensive, well, look, sorry, but government is not, it's not the role of government to police offensiveness, which is very subjective. So that's something we're meant to do socially through, peer pressure, ostracization, encouragement, whatever. Um, so free speech. Secondly, fair borders. So some reasonable middle ground on immigration. Now, saying zero people come in the country as of now, that seems probably a little extreme, right? Um, but then saying, yeah, anyone can come in and if even if you're deported, quote unquote, we're not going to check. We just hope you do it. You're the kind of person who was cheeky enough to break the law and come here illegally, but we're going to hope that you're not that cheeky that you would just ignore us when we tell you to leave. A bit ridiculous, like how is that? How are these people actually our government? No offense. I mean, but yeah. And then thirdly, full sovereignty. So basically, the decisions which affect Ireland should be primarily made in Ireland. So I support staying in the EU and trying to reform the EU from the inside. And then, like a toxic relationship, if they refuse to meet us halfway, then we'll have to leave. Because currently, it's not fair. It's not a lot of people who support the EU probably, might not be aware of all the little details which people like me would be concerned about. But it's just turning into an anti-democratic authoritarian thing where it just tells people what's going to happen, and it doesn't matter if the cultural diversity and the diversity of approaches to Hungary can have their way of living, France can have another. We all have to be exactly the same. Like, well, what about yeah, diversity? I thought you liked that. But so, and what happened to compromise and negotiation and communication instead of just top down telling us what's going to happen, which is basically what empires do, what the British Empire did to us. So, I advocate, we'll get to the details of what I would say, but basically, you know, fair borders and full sovereignty, those two, it's not intentionally, these terms are a bit vague, so we can get everyone to the table. But basically, fair borders, like, yeah, some sort of border system, limited immigration, not limitless, unlimited immigration. No. And of course, it would mean illegal immigration, none of that, right? But then the legal immigration, like, what about that? Like, some, or how do we do it? And fair borders, full sovereignty. That's quite, you could interpret that in many ways, but the idea, of like, yeah, we are a country, we're not like a province, so we have full sovereignty. And we are partners to the EU, and we are very deeply embedded, committed partners, like a friendship or a relationship. But in a relationship, you can't say, hey, I'm your husband, so we will go to this restaurant. It's like, well, hey, look, we're equals here, aren't we? Isn't what do you think this is? So people who kind of stand by those things, triple F, free speech, fair borders, full sovereignty. And there are seven of us. My favorite number, as it happens, in Dublin Bay North. And so I'm going to present them here and tell you a little bit about them. So myself, Jamie McGlue, born and raised in Australia, Perth. But my parents are from Dublin Bay North. My father's from Howth, my mum's from Killester. And I have, visited on family holidays over the years and gradually fell more and more in love with Ireland. And then I decided to immigrate, sort of, here, I guess, immigrate, but back to Ireland. And yeah, I just feel very at home here. I really love it. And it's interesting. I think I'm an outsider insider, and so I feel very privileged and blessed, but very like well, suited to this position to be able to talk about immigration. As an immigrant, I'm like as immigrant as you can be while still being Irish, or as Irish as you can be while still being an immigrant. Um, because I'm right on the border there, and then so I'm kind of trying to talk to both sides, say, hey, mainstream, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, nothing against you. Like I'm sure we can have a great conversation over dinner and whatever, but um, certain of your policies, I think there's a bit of a bubble going on, and I I, I can talk to them like that, um, and I can also talk to the other side, say, yeah, whatever far right or whatever. No, you're so far you are right on most of these topics. Um, so, but anyway, but yeah, so I'd consider myself a pretty middle of the road person. Like I love everyone, but I don't want everyone to live in my house. So I love all the countries of the world, but I want to travel there, and some immigration's definitely good, but having limitless people coming into a country, there's a few problems with that. So it waters down the local culture. You go to certain parts of Ireland where it's just the village, and it's really special. Everyone knows each other. Everyone's laughing. Oh, hey, Michael. Hey, Gary. Whatever. Da, 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 da. And there's a certain way. Even different parts of Ireland have different cultures, right? So there's plenty of multiculturalism within Ireland. Look at the dialects, what's Canunt, like the different dialects of Gaeilge. Um, and so, and that really, like, look at anywhere in the world. It's happened. This isn't the first time it's happened. Look what Europeans did to other societies. Two wrongs don't make a right. It's not fair to now do it to Europe. Say, yeah, payback, let's dissolve the cultures of Europe. Like, what are you talking about? That's if it's wrong then, it's wrong now. And Ireland wasn't even part of it then. We were one of the first and one of the most viciously oppressed people who subject to colonialism. But anyway, keep it simple. Uh, I really love cultures everywhere, and I personally would think fair borders would mean some amount of immigration. Um, yeah, it's great having people from other countries coming in for the economy. Certain businesses, if you can't find people locally, it's good to have that flexibility. But it shouldn't be like, I won't bother even trying to get someone locally. I'll just get someone, from overseas, or I can give them a better deal where maybe they'll be happy with this salary or whatever. So I can undercut the local people, um, and just constantly bringing in more people. So I think there's got to be a balance. And also for democracy's sake, if we can, let's say we go to a change of government and we set like a much lower immigration intake, like Australia, where okay, you got certain skills, we'll let you in, but we're not like having a blanket, yeah, heaps of people come in. It's not quite controlled. Um, that would be a proof of like, okay, democracy is healthy in Ireland because we've had a significant change of direction in the government. If it's like, oh no, it's always the same, how sure are we that we really have democracy still? So just for that, I think on the principles themselves, it's what we should do. Say, hey, look, it's amazing you all want to come here, and that's amazing. We love coming to your countries too. However, Ireland has a huge number of people from other countries now, and we need to culturally absorb this so that Ireland remains Irish, which is what the tourists want. They go to Ireland, they want to have an Irish experience. I go to France, I want a French experience. I go to Morocco, I want a Moroccan experience. It's totally cool. And so the Irishness of Ireland, like, if you have too many people coming in too soon, it creates ghettos, it prevents true assimilation and cultural exchange and kind of melding into one another. And so, we've seen that in other countries. So we don't need that. Free speech, attacks on saying, oh, hate speech, look, during the COVID, if they had those laws during COVID, guess what? They would have, put, people like me who didn't take the injection, vaccine, so to speak, although technically it's a new type of technology, a genetic therapy. Um, but I would have been, as it was, I wasn't allowed to go into bars or restaurants for like a year. Wasn't allowed to socialize, so it was a bit lonely at times. I just moved here. But imagine if they had the Lord, when I'm saying, oh, yeah, I think we shouldn't be doing this. We should let people be free. And if you're vulnerable, you stay at home, but everyone else mingles and gets herd immunity. They'd be like, hate speech. Or, like they could have used that against us. And like it was such a toxic time. I think they would have used it. Um, but just look at any time throughout history, the governments are going a bit authoritarian. And look, I have children. I can see the impulse with myself with my children, where they're going crazy, and there's a temptation to just shut it down, just make it simple, do what I say. I'm busy. And you have to try to go against that and go, okay, no, be patient, let them explore, try to communicate with them. And so it's not exactly the same, but there's something like that where there's a natural inclination for governments and anyone in power to try to just control things because it's easier, rather than communicating and kind of putting in more energy to kind of allow its subjects to have more freedom, which complicates things, right? But it's worth it and it's necessary. It's a necessary complexity the government has to deal with, and that's their job. That's why we put them in power. So free speech, it's not just the engine for democracy, and that's how we figure out what the problems are, what the solutions are, but also it is a bulwark against totalitarianism. So it is how democracy solves problems, and it's also how we keep democracy, right? So the third thing there, so full sovereignty, yeah, I think the EU, has brought a bunch of benefits to Ireland, and being connected culturally, and there's certain instances where funding's come in, although I believe last I checked, we put more in than we get out. Um, but there's benefits for sure. Um, and it's great being able to travel, just you've got the one passport, but I think one change of law is all that would be required, and I'd be happy with the EU continuing to be part. And I think this is what the whole EU needs. So let's spread this idea because it's not my idea; it just came to me, right? But like, I don't own the idea; it existed before me, right? So the idea is, so in law, the way it currently stands is if there is a conflict between EU law and um, national law, then the EU law triumphs. It trumps the national law. And so Ireland has a law saying this. If the EU has a different law, unless there's some special arrangement where there's an exemption from it, the EU law just overwrites the Irish law. Um, does that seem right to you? The reason that is that way is because there's a principle of uniformity that the EU wants. Part of its thing is an ever closer union. They want to get closer and closer, which is interesting because that's basically an admission that they want to create a superstate, um, rather than a trade, something more resembling the trade network, which we all agreed to when that's what, yeah, it's a trade network, European trade network, join up in the 70s. And then it's turned, if they'd said, yeah, you know, European superstate, you'll be like a province. Want to join? How many people would have joined? Um, and that's called modifying the contract, by the way, which means technically, if you modify a contract in law, you are terminating the contract. The other party has to agree to the new terms. And so essentially, if that is what they're trying to do, essentially they've got no contract anymore. Uh, but anyway, so the one change of law is to flip it, make it so that anytime there's a conflict, the national law triumphs over the EU law. And so, say the EU brings in some law and they force it through. Anyone who doesn't like it, those countries can just make a migration pact or something. Ireland can just go, oh, okay, we make our own law. Okay, we're out. And the EU is like, oh, and then maybe another country does that. And so it's democracy. The countries who want it go along with it. Those who don't. And what that would do is that would force the EU so that they would no longer be able to dominate the member states. But not just that, they would then, game theory, they would anticipate that, and they would know that we can do it, so they wouldn't waste their time. Same thing happens in Switzerland, by the way, because they've direct democracy. You can have referenda. If you've got enough signatures, you can just put a law in, and everyone has to vote on it. So if the politicians break their promises, the people can just put in the opposite idea, and they win, via everyone votes on it by a referendum. So it'd be a similar thing where basically the EU would know, look, we have to communicate and we have to cooperate, we have to compromise, we have to be democratic, essentially, with the member states. And if it's a good idea, we should be able to explain why and good reasons. And maybe we realize through that, actually, it's not that great an idea. They have some good points. These, Lithuania or, whatever, Denmark, they've got some good points. Okay, well, let's modify it. Or maybe let's make certain exceptions for those particular countries. So it just enhance the information flow and the democratic nature of the EU. And so then they would only put forth these deals which they knew people would agree to. Yeah, so it'd be one change of law. Get the whole Eurozone or the EU to be like, whenever there's a conflict, the EU law is secondary. The national law triumphs. And it would create a bit more diversity within Europe, but I think it's definitely like with political and legal regimes, systems, but I think that would be worth it. And anything where it's too inconvenient, negotiation, compromise, if it's big enough of a problem, you will resolve it, you know? So free speech, fair borders, full sovereignty. You can, yeah, and Jamie McGlue, right? So please vote me number one at the Dublin Bay North elections and spread the word. You know, like I've just had been blessed with a second child, so I've been pretty busy. I'm a bit late to. I've been planning to run the whole time, but I ran in the local elections here for Hoth, where I live, um, and Malahide. All right, Malahide, you're cool too. Um, but Hoth, oof, mystical beauty, you know. Anyway, so but you know, there's some you might see some articles I'm not mentioned yet or whatever. I'm trying to correct that, but basically I feel like I have a lot of good ideas which would be very good for Ireland, and I have an immense love of Ireland. And being Irish, but also being Australian, I feel like I have a unique input to this debate, especially as relates to immigration, and some of these other things like sovereignty, say. And I have an immense, you know, like a very passionate about Irish history, and I have a lot of knowledge of history in general. So I have and philosophy. So I have these other angles to contribute. I studied actually philosophy and political science at university, and prior to that, that's what I graduated with in the University of Western Australia. But prior to that, I was studying law and history, and then law, you know, I couldn't quite get myself interested in it. It's interesting to some extent, but it wasn't, you know, it didn't resonate at the time. And so I gave that up. And but so this is kind of my background, you know, and yeah. So I mean, you can learn. I'm learning Irish. Tamagalam Gaelga. Ní féidirlum a lorch iontach ach Támig úsáid an teanga le fáistí agus is éhanlum you know, a bheith an seo in Gra agus in Changa. You know, I can't speak properly, but I'm learning Irish, and for whatever that's worth, you know, just to give you a bit of a taste for myself, I'm a musician. You know, I write poetry, good poetry too, not like poetry, real poetry. You know, but anyway, and so that's enough about me. So now we're going to talk about the other candidates, and to do this, we're going to go to triplef.irish, which is a website I created for kind of spreading the triple F idea, meme, you know? I was trying to think what's a good way we can capture the essential policies which are under attack here. And I think someone in the comments, shout out to you, whoever you are, said like, oh, triple F, the three Fs, I like it. I was like, oh, I hadn't really thought it. It was just like, you know, the poetic brain, I guess, at work. I just like, oh yeah, the Fs was there, but I hadn't thought of putting it as that kind of a short thing, like just, you know, FFF, triple F. But here it is. And I think basically, look, we don't have the luxury of like, oh, I really like your environmental policies. So who cares about that you don't, you know, you're willing to sell out our sovereignty, or who cares that you are willing to dissolve our border, or who cares that you'll let the government take away our free speech? No, these things are essential. No matter how good someone's policies are, if they don't agree to one, two, and three of these, you cannot vote them in. That would be my heartfelt opinion. And so all the seven candidates, including myself, I'm going to present today, they are all people who, as far as I can tell, they stand by these three things. And the others, as far as I can tell, do not. And so that's the problem. And that's what we need to realize. This election is a sanity check for Ireland. You know, get out of the media bubble of like, oh, this is predicted into the Irish Times, Irish Independent. There's a certain cultural milieu, you know, certain social circles connected, you know, a certain elite perspective there. And there's a lot of good things that comes out of it. Fair play to them. You know, I'm not someone who's like, oh, they're all, you know, terrible people. You know, I have friends and family friends who are like, you know, in these circles, and yeah, I love these people. They're great. You know, I love all of us. You know, I think we're all one big team in Ireland and in the world in general, you know. And if we fix up, my big dream is we fix up Ireland, and then we can start helping fix up the rest of the world, you know. But enlightened nationalism is the way. Free speech, fair borders, full sovereignty. You know, we allow our cultures to be balanced, and we help other cultures do the same. But So here we are, and we have what was I saying there about yeah. So basically, this election, it's a sanity check. We need to focus on these three things. Even certain other things like abortion, incredibly important issue. Lives are at stake. But I would say, if we, this is a very hard thing to do, but if you're going to rank order these things, like, um, in order to be able to even have a country where you can have a discussion and the right ideas rise to the top, you need these three things on this list. And so, I suppose some people would disagree with me there, but I would say even that would be a good example where it's an incredibly important issue. But these things, these three, I don't think there's anything up at that level. This is basically the core foundation. And so even very, very important issues would be second to this. Um, so this, you can go here, fff.irish, and read about this. And this is a little thing on just how to vote, what you should do. Pretty simple, but basically give a preference to all seven people I'm going to tell you about, and nothing to anyone else. Leave it blank. Otherwise, if none of the seven people get in, you will give votes to those people. So make sure only people who you know are standing by these things, you give them a vote. In Dublin Bay North, now, okay, so and then there's a little thing explaining free speech, blah, blah, blah. Now, I've got all the provinces and the different districts where you've got whoever's there. You can see here, Leash, to be announced. I'm busy. I haven't had time to fill up this whole thing. If you know people in Leash, if you know people in Kildare North who are standing by these three things, please send me an email. You can email jamiemcglue@gmail.com, JAMIEMCGLUE@gmail.com. And let me know. And I will be filling up as I can these details. But you got, Avril Corcoran in Kildare North. We've got Dublin Bay South, Nick Delahanty, Laura Lee Dorr. See, I need to update this because we have, what's his name? Rob, let's just look at it. What's it? Rob Carey, is it? Yeah, so I'll have to update this. But yeah, like I say, we've been busy. But Dublin Bay North, we're all in order here. We have seven candidates. Jamie McGlue, independent. Michael Burke, independent. Kevin Coyle, independent. Diarmuid O'Corcoran, independent. I need to write independent here, actually. Brian Garrigan, independent. James Morris, AIM2, Paul Fitzsimmons, Irish Freedom Party. These seven, I would highly encourage you to list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in whatever order, these people. And that way, say you give me your first preference, but I don't get enough votes. It's okay. You're not splitting the vote. That vote gets whoever you gave number two, they will get my vote. So it actually doesn't, it's as if you gave them a one, that they'll still get it. So if we all do this with each other, and I'm in the process of reaching out to all of these candidates, and will hopefully get us to all talk together, and basically to encourage people, hey, vote for all of us in whatever order you want, because all I care about is that the right ideas and the right candidates get in. It doesn't need to be me. That's fine. I have plenty of other things I can do, um, but I am concerned to make sure it's not, the usual crowd. So, yeah, so we could say Michael Burke. So I've met him, don't know him too well, but he's a very interesting character. He's got a lot of, I think, good things to say. He will open this in a new window. So he's talking about, cost of living. He talks about community banking. He's got a lot of, he's a former soldier, but he's got a lot of pretty good ideas, I think. And he seems like a pretty reasonable, kind person, but, and so you could check him out. We have Kevin Coyle. So check out Kevin here. So 33 and a father, like myself, Kevin. Anawa or father. Here we go. Independent candidate. So again, I don't know much about him, but I've gone through and figured out, yeah, okay, he supports Triple F, free speech, defending fair borders, and full sovereignty. We should have our own political power. Diarmuid O'Corcoran. So Here he is, running as an independent. You can check him out. Now, on triplef.irish, all their links are here. So you can just go, there's donation links and the links to this Twitter or their website if they have one. So you can check him out here. Again, seems like a good guy, standing up for the right principles. And with all these, look, I'm not saying that I agree with them on everything. I don't know. I don't have enough time to know what they think about everything. And certain cases where I've gone, okay, that's not how I would have presented it. It seems too, I'm not saying for these two lads necessarily in particular, but there are cases among this list where I've noticed like I wouldn't present the idea that way because it'll, be easily demonized as far right or whatever, or just in general, I prefer more positive, kind of bring people together thing. But um, but fair enough. The other side, there's a place for that as well, and it takes all kinds to make a world. And so personally, and I know some of these guys are into like socialism. They would think, yeah, big state, and then just is good, and then use it properly. I would say, no, 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 that's bad. You could have like a socialism, focused on helping, lower income people more than the upper income people. That would be progress on what we have now, where we have socialism for the corporations mostly. Um, but still, it's not the answer. The answer is small government, libertarianism. That's what's really good for poor people. Above all, it's best for poor people, good for the rich also, and it'll make the poor richer. So cutting regulation, spending, and taxation by 80% or whatever ish. That would be my long-term vision. But there's people here who I disagree with on that, but it doesn't matter because we're in an emergency, and you're not going to hear about this on RTE or whatever. But free speech. Do you think we have a right to free speech? Yes, then you shouldn't be voting in the Greens, Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil, or Labour, or any of these people who went along with it. All the mainstream parties, Social Democrats. Um, so people before profit, like they're all part of that, the kind of woke mind virus thing. And so yeah, I'd say free speech, you need to be very careful. Vote independent or nationalist. Fair borders. Do you believe, are you one of the 70% or whatever it is estimated of Irish people, although you never know with polls how accurate they are, who thinks, yeah, we have enough people coming in. We have plenty of diversity, maybe too much, where, there's areas where it seems like it's not mixing in with the local culture enough, and the local culture is getting sidelined, which is not right. This is our home. Um, Nothing against individuals. Like, as I said in one of my videos, I am pro-immigrant, anti-immigration, right? If we go into more detail, I am pro-immigrant, I'm pro everyone. If you're a criminal or if you're a bad person, then there should be consequences. But ultimately, I think we're all children of God, and we're all branches on the one tree. So even at the fundamental level, I love everyone. But I'm pro-immigrant, but immigration, I would be pro-immigration in certain situations, certain times and places. But in this time and place, well, no, we've got enough people from abroad, actually. It's actually causing problems if we bring in too many people. So you need to be a bit nuanced, but yeah, it's like anti-immigrant, Canada. It's like, well, no, anti-immigration, it's a big difference. But and then, full sovereignty. Do you think our ancestors fought for, 800 years to have freedom to go our own way, and then we're just going to throw that away? That doesn't seem right, does it? The WHO pandemic treaty, so they'll be able to declare a pandemic, and there's full of corruption, that organization. Look what happened and how much deception there was and incompetence during the COVID fiasco, and completely against the science on so many things. It didn't come from a lab. Okay, actually it did. Or take these things, or actually there's a bunch of negative effects due to this intervention we barely studied. Oh, stay inside. Oh, whoops, that suppresses the immune system. Everyone be afraid. Oh, wait, that also suppresses the immune system. Don't go to the beach. Oh, wait a minute, vitamin D and salt water, that's all good for you. So thing after thing. And yet I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but right now we're at great danger that the WHO treaty is going to be, passed. And these are things that the government parties are all on board with. Yeah, cool, great. Sounds good. They see themselves as middle managers. They don't see themselves as leaders, ultimately. They don't think they're the CEO. They think they're the mid-level manager. And they're very loyal to some other CEO, maybe in Davos or somewhere, who knows. And again, I'm not being conspiratorial. Like, the people in power, I think there's a mix of people with good intentions who just have the wrong ideas, and they haven't been exposed to the right information, or they, closed their ears, subconscious confirmation bias, whatever. People with good intentions, but the bad ideas, bad ideology. And then there's bad, people, quote unquote, who, it's just corruption and they just care about themselves, lining their own pockets. And for example, immigration, there's a lot of money being made off, the immigration situation at the expense of the public, you know. So I'd say there's a mix, and it's a distraction. We don't need to think about it really at this point. The government are doing all these things in contravention of the, triple F, and basically they're attacking civil liberties, um, limited immigration, and localized power. What's wrong with that? Triple F, another way to think of it would be civil liberties. So freedom of speech, but also these other freedoms, freedom of movement, freedom of religion, freedom of medical autonomy, um, civil liberties, limited immigration, not zero, but, limited, like, and localized power. Let people have their own, you know, democracy as much as possible, as local an area as is feasible. That's all under attack. Now, is it because of incompetence or corruption? Probably a mix, But the cool thing is we don't need to get into it. And we don't need to divide the room by analyzing it. And people go, oh, you're crazy. No, you're crazy. Or whatever. It doesn't matter why. It's happening, right? These things are being attacked. So let's just say, get rid of the people who are attacking these things. All right, back to the candidates. Brian Garrigan. So here we are. So wants mass deportation and save our culture from illegal immigrants. Blah, blah, blah. Give the accommodation to nurses, teachers, and hardworking people. So, for example, like I wouldn't present it that way, though I agree, like say people who are illegally here, 100% have to be deported like immediately. Um, and I think that's what he's referring to here. But yeah, so the firebrand language, that resonates with certain people and that can bring them to the polls to vote the right way. I have another type of language which can maybe resonate with people who are maybe more Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil voters, and I think that's all to the good, And the thing is, let's not judge each other. Let's all just be adults and take care of the situation. We need a change of government direction. And let's say vote Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil out of power. And then maybe they go, oh my God, they have to lick their wounds. But oh yeah, no, that was really bad idea what we were doing. New leadership changes, flush it out. Maybe 10 years down the line, we could have them again and they could be totally transformed. They could actually be good, you know? So just for now, we need to get rid of them. The familiar is dangerous right now. The familiar is not safe, as you might be thinking. It's very dangerous to keep voting the same people in power when they've been treating us this way. A and two. So now we have some, and these are just, and this is not the order I'll be voting necessarily. This is just random order, popping them, adding them to my list. So we have AIM2 here. So this is James Morris from AIM2. Now AIM2, so I think they're on board with the Triple F. The one thing would be fair borders. Their interpretation of that seems to be legal immigration, like not really putting any limit on it, but totally ending illegal immigration. And fair enough, that's one potential answer, and that'll be much better than we have now. But you still have the thing of like, is it fair in a housing crisis when we have a native language which is, still endangered, and we really need to put in a lot of work to figure out the number one thing is why? Why should we want to revive Irish, Gaelic? And so I think we definitely should, and I think we can if we want to, and we will if we want to. But so there's these things we have to figure out. We've got these family disputes going on. We're bringing newcomers to the party. It's like, hey, no, yeah, sorry, can't gate crash this party, and no, no new invitees, no plus ones. Sorry, doors closed. Right, we've got enough people for now. We need to sort something out. But their position would be like, yeah, I don't know. Is that just what they think is best, or do they think practically they want to get into power, and so they don't want to be, maybe alienating people in the mainstream too much? I don't know, but whatever. They are on board with fair borders. They talk about the need, yeah, must have a balanced immigration policy, and they address ending the illegal immigration situation, whereas the government parties are just, pretending everything's fine, / inviting millions of new people into the country, which is outrageous. So, and then we have finally Irish Freedom Party here. Yep, Paul Fitzsimmons. So again, I don't know much about Paul, but yep, so he's standing for the Irish Freedom Party, who themselves, their stated policies are in defense of freedom of speech, national sovereignty, limited immigration, etc. So you might be feeling like, oh my God, how can I vote for these people? Because some of them are controversial. But think about this. We're all going to be in the grave eventually, right? Life doesn't go on forever. What are we so afraid of? The thing we should be most afraid of is not being ourselves and not being true to ourselves, because that's all we've got. You can't trust other people. If you trust someone else to make the decisions for you and tell you who to vote for, and I'm not telling you to just listen to me, I'm giving you ideas you can think about, but only do it if it is what makes sense for you. If something doesn't make sense for you, then please do not listen to me. Um, but you all with if you trust someone else, I trust RTE, or I trust, BBC or whoever, or I trust my friend Mick, then you're outsourcing the decision to them. But how do you know that they're a person who trustworthy? How do you know you can trust that your decision to give them the decision is trustworthy? So you can't outsource this, because it all comes back to your judgment. And so we all have to just be brave and just say, okay, tune into my own intuition and what makes sense for me, you know? Now, so this is a list I would highly encourage you to be voting for. And please get in touch with candidates from other places so we can fill in, this list with more people. Malachy Steenson here on Independent in the Dublin Central. Yeah, so let's take a look at the general list of who's running. So here is the ballot. Share. I'll end this. Fá nóméid gachéine. Here we go. Okay, the ballot. Dublin Bay North. Independents. Now, these five, and then Paul Fitzsimmons and James Morris, I encourage you to vote for in whatever order you want, and then blank, blank, blank to everyone else. John Lyons. So he's an independent, but he's, very left wing, and I haven't seen any mention from him of the triple F kind of point of view and being able to understand that this is really important. And he ran for People Before Profit back in the day, and it seems like they have a quite radical, kind of essentially communist kind of point of view, where they don't really seem to recognize nation states and national identity. They think, oh, we're all, whatever, let it all in, let everyone around. And, I don't mean to, uh, tarnish any reputations, but we just have to be honest. This is what politics is. We're trying to make an important decision, so we have to be very honest but respectful. And so all respect to every single person on this list is a human being. They were a baby once upon a time. Their parents love them. Their friends love them. And we should all love each other on some level, love thy neighbor and love thine enemy. But yeah, so as far as I can tell, he is not in support of these policies, so we cannot take the chance of putting him on the ballot, giving him a vote. Barry Hennigan. So he seems like a really cool guy, really nice personality, seems very funny. I was watching a podcast with him with these two ladies, and great personality. He's a Gaeilgeoir, which I love, but when asked, I haven't seen any mention of, triple F stuff with him. And he is seems ensconced with, the powers that be. He was saying, yeah, oh, they've jokingly, kind of offered that I could, join a party or something. And he wasn't like, but I would never do that, So it seems quite like my sense is that he's said, he would be happy to, as an independent, to support the government and create. So essentially he's a government, candidate. He would be happy to support a Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil coalition, as an independent. And not only that, and having a lot of money behind him, posters everywhere. So, okay, and and so, yeah, again, like really seems like a cool guy. I think we'd have a great time, having a chat. And I would love to have a chat with him. He seems like a good laugh. But when asked near the end of the interview with these two ladies, what would you do if you got in power? He was mentioning like recycling and bins and things like that, which honestly, we're in such an emergency that, that can't be the only thing you mention when you've got the airtime. You should have thought ahead and be like, there must be something more important, right? And I think basically it's, my take would be that he wants to kind of be involved, but he doesn't really see a problem with the current situation. And so I would say respectfully, that's dangerous. There's a big problem. Free speech, fair borders, and full sovereignty are all under attack. Doesn't matter if this is where road to hell paved with good intentions or road to hell paved with corrupt intentions. Doesn't matter. We're in an emergency and we need people who understand that and are going to take action against it. And by the way, even if we just get a significant minority of people in the dole, say if we don't get enough to form a government, which seems quite likely, but a big minority of people who are aware of this kind of triple F mindset of limiting the influence of this crazy change of ideas which has come up in recent times, that will be enough just to put a stick in the wheel and stop this machine moving and stop the problem getting worse, and potentially even make the problem get better quite soon. But at the very least, let's not see the immigration level skyrocket even more. Let's not see, hate speech bills being brought in. And Helen McEntee said she's definitely going to bring in the hate speech bill proper. Like she brought in most of it, but this thing specifically banning certain types of speech, the government can just decide what's hateful now. They definitely will bring that in if we give them power. So we must be very careful. And so say, Mr. Hennigan here, tá brán orm ach ní cheapan gohfuil sé smuoin of Gama, good idea. A tower and vote, voti le chaig, A, giving him a vote. See my broken Irish, but no embarrassment. That's another thing. Coming from Australia, this is a great example of immigration, how it can be good. Cultural diversity, cultural exchange. From Australia, I got this thing of like, oh, who cares what other people think? Just be yourself. Whereas in Ireland, it's more like, oh, what would my nanny think and what do my neighbors think, And so I've got so many good things from Ireland. I'm getting them daily, but there are good things also, say, I can bring from Australia, and so all cultures, can be doing this. And so there's definitely a real benefit to immigration, but it's just too much of a good thing as possible. Like carrots are good for you, therefore let's eat 3 kilograms of carrots. No, that's too many carrots, All right. So who's next? Then Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin. So, okay, the government parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Greens, they have all just been terrible, not just on these issues, but many other things. Environment. Greens are meant to be environmental, and they've been allowing the forests to die. The guy who wrote the book, An Irish Atlantic Rainforest, what's his name? Owen Dialty or something. Sorry, I'm forgetting your name, mate. But he amazing book. I haven't finished it yet, but he talks about how the forests are dying. He's bringing back the native forest just by doing nothing, letting it grow in the Barra Peninsula in the west there. But basically saying we need to get rid of there's too many. There are too many deer and goats, and then also what was the other one? Yeah, like some invasive plant species like rhododendron, and we need to clear them out. And this is an emergency. This is ancestral forest. Rainforest is extremely rare around the world, but even rarer than that is temperate rainforest, not tropical, temperate rainforest. And Ireland, part of South Africa, part of New Zealand, I think, what was it, part of somewhere else, maybe, are the only parts of the world where you have it. And we're throwing it away. The Greens are in government. They hold the lever of power, and they've done nothing for this. It would be so easy. Instead, they're talking about climate change and things where the science is actually not, unfortunately, not as cut and dry as you'd like, and it's actually very politicized. And there's all these kind of, token things for the environment. Meanwhile, you're letting the forest die. So, okay. So apart from the current policy, triple F things, there's many other reasons. No to the Greens. They're not real environmentalists, or at least the party direction hasn't been. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, no votes. Sinn Féin, they're going along with all of these votes. They've been going along with like all of these attacks on freedom of speech, on the borders, on sovereignty. So yeah, they also, even if you've got a soft spot for Sinn Féin, vote for them next election, not this election. Skip one election and vote for the next one, right? You can still be Sinn Féin, but just say, hey, I had to give you a slap. Friends got to do that. I got to keep you in line, And Social Democrats gone along with everything. Same. Keane O'Callaghan seems, I haven't met him, but I know people who have, and they say he's a really nice guy, but seems like not adequately willing to, either not willing or not able to kind of see and uh, say in public, like this is not right, what's going on. And so, yeah, so it's one of these things where I feel like he's got a really good intentions, but I feel like the road to hell can be paved with just the same. So no vote. Labour, they've shown, they're happy to go into government with Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, and in general, they're all their, Aidan O'Riordan or whatever, uh, going on about how, it's all just far right and racist. It's like, hey, you're the most, hateful gang of people to ever talk about, hate speech. Like, it's so ironic. It's like you're demonizing half the country, while claiming that you defend that, you're against hate speech. It's like, okay, that's interesting. How do you justify that when you go to bed at night? I don't know. But and again, sorry to be blunt here, because if I meet any of these people in person, I'll give them a handshake and a smile, and generally I mean everyone the best, and I think we're all on the same team. But I know I'm wrong with things sometimes, and I need other people to help me. We need community, and so this election, we need to be very honest, and we cannot afford to get this choice wrong for another 5 years, because Ireland's in a very delicate situation. Just like the ecology of these old growth ancestral forests, the old growth ancestral culture of the Gaels. You can look up the Gaels, Gaels, on the internet, and you'll find they are a current population. They're not just in the past, but often they don't think of themselves as Gaels, and often they seem almost, too humble and too maybe obedient, maybe patterns set during the British Empire. I don't know, just guessing, to kind of say, yeah, no, we're not just going to go along with whatever other people tell us. Actually, we want to, cultivate our own culture here. And yeah, bring other people in to some extent, but it's okay to want Ireland to be Irish. And in fact, guess what? All the tourists coming, they want Ireland to be Irish too. There's all these foreigners from all over the place, and they want Ireland to be Irish, definitely, at least when they're on holiday. And I think most people who immigrate here, guess what? They could have immigrated to Canada, they could have immigrated to Australia. Why'd they come to Ireland? Because they like Ireland. They want an Irish experience, and that's what Irish people want as well. And the few Irish people who are like, no, the Irish culture is bad. We don't. Well, you can go to Canada too. You can go to Australia, or you could go to another European country. Like, the majority of people want Ireland to kind of continue this really beautiful, humble, gregarious, wonderful culture. Um, and if you're at odds with it, okay, well, you can't force the majority just because you've got a minority protest against it. And yeah, really, like it does. I'm not saying we have to, just have this Gaelic culture, but I think the Gaelic or Irish traditional culture should definitely remain the foremost culture here. And that's required for balance in society, I believe. But then it will be enriched and nourished by all these other cultures. Just like me, my own personality should be dominant within my head, but then it's really healthy to let my friends have a place in my mind, where they're influencing me. But I should never be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to be exactly like Susie. Yeah, exactly like her. I'll just copy her personality. I'll just download it. Like, no, you got to be yourself. And we need to come into contact with our own worthiness as individuals, and Ireland, we must do the same as a collective, because Ireland is beautiful and very worthy altogether. All right. People before profit, no chance. But not just because I'm against, I think socialism in its extreme forms is very dangerous. And even in its mild forms, it's like kind of junk food, if certain circumstances, if you've got other things going on, okay, it can be in balance, but it's not going to help you. It's always a drain. Freedom, economic, political, spiritual freedom, is what is good for us.